She walked into the elite neighborhood, in an old coat, with a worn bag, and no invitation. Residents glanced at each other. Is she the new cleaning lady? One girl handed her a 20. For lunch. Others raised their phones to film. She said nothing, just glanced toward the villa marked, residents only. And in her pocket, a keycard engraved in gold. Those who laughed didn't yet know. She already owned the ground they walked on. She walked with the careful grace of someone used to being watched, or dismissed. Her black hair was tied back in a low bun, her skin bronze against the muted gray of her coat. A tote bag swung from her shoulder, worn at the corners, its seams stitched by hand. No logos. No status symbols. She paused in front of a villa whose driveway sparkled like polished obsidian. A Bentley slept under a silk car cover nearby. Mira looked up at the facade of the mansion, then stepped forward and rang the intercom. A camera blinked awake. Seconds later, a voice buzzed through. Deliveries at the back. Mira didn't flinch. I'm not a delivery. A pause. Static. Then what exactly are you? The voice turned sharp, almost amused. I'm here to inquire about purchasing this villa, she said. Silence. Then laughter. Distant, not just from the intercom, but from a window above, where sheer curtains parted to reveal a woman in a cream silk robe and oversized sunglasses. She was already holding a phone, filming. Within minutes, Mira became a joke. She walked further in, glancing at the other homes. Sculpted lawns. Imported fountains. Security drones drifting like slow birds. The kind of wealth that didn't speak unless it needed to remind you it existed. She entered the open house set up for selective viewing, and was met by a man in a cobalt blazer who didn't bother to hide his surprise. Oh, he said, taking in her plain shoes, no makeup, no jewelry. There must be a mistake. The private showing is for. I received the invitation, Mira replied, and handed him a folded card. He took it, glanced at the seal, and frowned. She was allowed in. But permission is not the same as welcome. Inside, glass walls opened to see views and marble floors reflected nothing but disdain. Guests turned, blinking at her as if a gust of wind had brought in something it shouldn't. Two women leaned close, murmuring. Is she with catering? No, too slow for catering. Maybe one of those fake wellness consultants. One of them chuckled and said louder. Honey, the spa's down the road. This one's not for spiritual makeovers. A man in a linen blazer fake coughed. Hope the cleaning crew isn't getting bold these days. The crowd laughed. And Mira stood still. Her silence would be mistaken for weakness. But it was the kind of silence that could collapse a room. And very soon it would. By the time Mira reached the center of the open house, the air had changed. Not just disinterest now, hostility. That strange, instinctive pack behavior when a group senses an outsider and circles tighter, teeth behind smiles. Security should really screen the guest list better. Someone muttered, not even softly. A man with a salt and pepper beard, holding a wine glass too delicately for his jawline, raised his voice just enough. Either she's here to sell incense, or she took a wrong turn out of her tax bracket. A woman in a lavender suit laughed. Maybe she's doing a documentary, One Day in Richville. Her pearl earrings shook with glee. Mira moved forward, eyes straight. The villa's host, Delaney Astor, head of the Aramore Hills Homeowners Board, was standing near the infinity pool, greeting a ring of guests in cocktail dresses and Hermes belts. He saw Mira, blinked once, and then smiled tightly, the way you smile at a dog in a museum. Well, he said, I think housekeeping days are Tuesdays, love. I'm not staff, Mira said calmly. I came to discuss the offer on Lot 27. Delaney chuckled. Oh, sweetheart. Lot 27 isn't, for the public. That's a special listing. Reserved for vetted individuals. She's vetting us. Someone whispered, and the laughter came harder this time, unapologetic, loud, cruel. Maybe she thinks this is a reality show, another added. Like the rich and the delusional. One woman raised her phone. Smile, darling. You'll go viral for confidence if nothing else. Mira didn't smile. Her gaze swept the room, registering each face, each sneer that had blossomed into outright mockery. They thought they were clever, that their comments were just light jabs. But they were knifing her dignity with every word, cutting not just with classism but something more primal, fear of intrusion, of being seen by someone who didn't worship their world. Delaney leaned close, his cologne sharp. I'll be kind, okay? You can take the garden path to the back gate. There's a cab stand about 2 blocks down. You'll want to avoid traffic. I didn't come by cab, Mira said. Oh, my mistake. Uber? He grinned. Behind her, someone actually mimicked a car horn. Another woman's stage whispered, I heard she's been squatting in foreclosed homes to manifest her dream life. Then came the final blow. A teenager, maybe 17, daughter of one of the residents, walked up and placed a $20 bill in Mira's hand. For lunch, she said, beaming like she'd performed a civic duty. Mira looked down at the bill. She didn't return it. She didn't tear it. She simply folded it in half, placed it into her coat pocket, and looked at the girl with such quiet weight that the teenager's smile faltered and turned inward with shame. But the crowd didn't see that. They saw what they wanted. A nobody. And their mistake was about to cost them everything. Mira did not speak. Not when Delaney ushered her gently, mockingly, toward the villa's glass exit. Not when a woman in stilettos brushed past her with a stage whisper. She smells like linen spray and wet bus seats. Not even when the teenager who had handed her the 20 leaned over and said, Sorry, my mom said that's what you people need, right? The whispers were a storm now. But Mira moved through them like fog, untouched. She stopped by a floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the ocean. The sea was calm, indifferent. It had seen worse. From her pocket, she pulled out a small notepad and pen. Not flashy. No leather cover. Just a lined notebook with the corner frayed and a list written in tight, neat handwriting. She turned to a page titled, Aramore Hills, Emotional Temperature Test. She made a single checkmark. Behind her, the crowd watched. She's writing a Yelp review. Someone laughed. Maybe she's sketching her memoir. Another added. The day I dreamed too big. Or she's counting the minutes until we asked her to clean the bathroom. But Mira said nothing. Her quiet unnerved them. Her refusal to defend herself, to correct them, to fight back, it was unnatural. No one stayed calm in the face of ridicule unless they were either completely broken, or completely sure. A woman in a butter-yellow dress stepped forward, emboldened. You don't belong here, she said, her voice soft but laced with ice. This community is curated. Every person here was chosen. Mira looked at her, just once. Her hazel eyes didn't waver, but there was no hate in them. Just a quiet kind of pity. It was the woman who looked away first. Then Delaney, trying again. I don't want to be unkind, but you're out of your depth. These villas are multi-million-dollar properties. The annual HOA fee alone is more than what you probably... He stopped. Because Mira had pulled something else from her coat pocket. Not a wallet. Not a checkbook. Just a silver keycard. Plain, but engraved at the bottom with a gold emblem, a stylized E. Delaney blinked. His eyes narrowed. Where did you get that? Mira didn't answer. She simply slid it back into her pocket. Around her, people shifted. Murmurs now laced with confusion. She has a keycard? Must be fake. Stolen, maybe. What does he stand for? Elevator access? Employee? Delaney stepped back. The first crack in his mask. Mira returned to her notepad. She wrote another word. Observed. And underneath it. Phase 1 complete. Then she folded it shut. Her silence was heavier now. Not meek, not uncertain, but full. The kind of silence that comes when someone already knows how the story ends. And that knowledge was a blade none of them saw coming. It was the gardener who noticed it first. He was kneeling near the marble fountain, pruning the lavender that lined the edges of the central courtyard when his eyes caught the glint of Mira's keycard again. His clippers paused mid-air. Slowly he rose. The emblem, the stylized E in gold, wasn't just any design. It was the original seal used in the founding documents of Edenstone Developments. The very company that had designed, funded, and constructed Aramore Hills. He turned, confusion on his face, and whispered to the estate manager beside him. That whisper spread like smoke, to a staff member, to a security guard, to one of the more informed residents. And suddenly, phones began to light up. One after another. Searches. Cross-references. Whispers turning into gasps. Edenstone. Elston. Mira Elston. Delaney was still mid-sentence, posturing again. You see, real estate like this doesn't fall into the hands of just anyone, dear. You need vetted wealth, history, clean financials. When his phone buzzed, he glanced at the screen, and his entire face changed. He blinked rapidly, like a man trying to wake up from the edge of a cliff. Then he turned to Mira again, fully, sharply this time. Elston? She raised her eyes, and said nothing. But the silence was no longer empty. It was echoing now, because the rest of them were catching up. A younger man near the hors d'oeuvres table, a financial advisor's son, was already on a real estate forum. He spoke aloud, as if his voice might steady him. Edenstone Properties was founded 21 years ago. CEO listed on the original board. Mira J. Elston. She was 19. Someone else chimed in, her voice brittle. The trust that bought the land Aramore Hills was built on came from Elston Holdings. The master deed, another added faintly. All of Aramore is technically owned by, oh my God. Mira finally moved. She stepped to the center of the room, her shoulders square, her coat still wrapped around her modest clothes like armor. She reached into her tote one last time and pulled out a black leather folio. Inside it, the original deed to the development. Signed. Stamped. Sealed. With her name, Mira Juliet Elston, etched in pen that had long since dried but never faded. And underneath it, a notice of ownership reassignment. Dated 2 months ago. It stated clearly. Effective immediately, all governing decisions and control of Aramore Hills, including residency approval and property transactions, will revert solely to the principal shareholder, Mira Juliet Elston. It wasn't just that she could afford to live here. She owned the land beneath their houses. She owned them. Gasps broke into silence. The laughter was gone, smothered under the weight of their error. And Mira? She just watched them all try to remember what, exactly, they had said when they thought she was no one. The silence didn't last. It curdled. A woman near the glass balcony, still clutching her wine, whispered, This is some kind of setup, right? Delaney's voice followed, brittle and too loud. No one told me. I didn't know who she was. If someone had. You didn't ask. Mira replied quietly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her words hung like a verdict. The estate manager arrived then, flanked by 2 staff members in dark uniforms. They didn't look confused. They looked prepared. Ms. Elston, he said, bowing his head slightly. Shall we begin? Mira nodded once. The manager lifted a folder. Effective immediately, under Clause 7 of the Aramore Community Charter, any resident found violating the Ethical Residency Code is subject to expulsion. He looked up. Ms. Elston has documented names, video evidence, and witness accounts. He began to read. Delaney asked her. Violation, public humiliation of a guest, class-based slander. Delaney sputtered. I've lived here for 15 years. You have 3 days to vacate. The manager replied flatly. Gasps rang out. A woman dropped her wine. Margaret Liu. Violation, social intimidation. Public mocking of a prospective buyer. Effective removal from property 9. Bryce Callum. Talia Moore. Zachary Chin. Lizette Arnault. The names kept coming. Mira didn't flinch as people turned to plead. But it was a joke. We didn't know. I thought she was. Beneath you? Mira finished. She stepped forward, calm and steady. You judged me by what I wore, how I walked, and assumed that meant you could diminish me. Then she pointed gently to the villa behind them. These homes were never meant for people like you. She turned to the manager. Bring the moving trucks. And with that, the exodus began. By late afternoon, the sun had shifted, casting long shadows over the marble walkways of Aramore Hills. The once pristine calm had fractured. Moving trucks lined the cul-de-sac. Staff in crisp uniforms removed luggage from homes that hours ago had brimmed with laughter and arrogance. Inside the central villa, Mira stood by the arched window. The crowd had thinned, but not disappeared. The expelled lingered in confusion, some defiant, others stunned. Those who hadn't been named stood frozen, guilty by proximity, spared only by silence. Mira stepped onto the villa's front steps. No microphone. No camera crew. Just her voice. I didn't come to impress you, she said, her tone quiet but undeniable. I came to observe. The breeze pulled at the hem of her coat. Her hazel eyes, unblinking, swept over them. I wanted to see who you were when you thought no one important was watching. When you believed someone like me, someone in flats and a coat that didn't cost a fortune, was beneath you. She let the silence stretch. Some turned away. Others could not. You laughed, filmed, whispered. You gave money as if I were starving. But the hunger wasn't mine. Her gaze cut through the crowd. It was yours. For status. For power. For the illusion of superiority. She took a breath. These villas were never just buildings. They were supposed to shelter more than privilege. They were meant to hold grace. Generosity. Community. Mira turned slightly and gestured to a group of people just now arriving on foot. They looked out of place, but not for the reason Mira had. Single mothers with children. A retired veteran holding a manila envelope. A pair of siblings in thrifted coats clutching a single suitcase. Their eyes were wide with disbelief. I've spent years funding housing for those who were locked out of places like this. Until today, I'd only seen the policies. The numbers. But I needed to see it with my own eyes. She looked toward the newcomers, her voice softening. These homes now belong to families who need them. Who understand that dignity doesn't wear labels. And community isn't forged through exclusion. The former residents stood in stunned silence. Their pride, once polished, now cracked wide open. Mira's eyes didn't hold vengeance, only clarity. To those who stayed silent, she added, glancing at a few whose heads were bowed. Thank you. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is not join the cruelty. Then she stepped back. And let the gates of Aramore open wide, for the first time, not to wealth, but to worth. By dusk, Aramore Hills looked nothing like it had that morning. The Bentleys and Benzes had vanished from driveways, replaced by dusty hatchbacks and old sedans humming with exhaustion and disbelief. Children's laughter echoed faintly now, not from curated garden parties, but from actual joy, barefoot games on lawns once roped off behind, residents-only signs. Mira walked the path between the villas, her coat draped over her arm. She didn't carry a clipboard. No staff followed her. Her only companion was the hush that followed true transformation. She paused at lot 14, where a woman in her 50s stood, clutching the keys like they might dissolve in her hand. You're sure? The woman asked. Her eyes were still wide, wary of cruel jokes. Mira nodded. Your paperwork is real. The house is yours. And your daughter's. Tears welled up, but the woman only nodded hard, her lips trembling. Then I'm going to plant sunflowers. He always said they'd look good here. Who did? My husband, she said, her voice catching. He died last winter. Mira placed a hand on her shoulder. Then let's make this place worthy of his memory. Down the hill, the old security guard, Jamal, stood by his booth watching everything unfold. He had never laughed when they mocked Mira. He hadn't spoken, but he hadn't smiled either. When Mira passed, he gave a small nod. You remembered, he said. Mira stopped. You were the girl who stood outside those gates 10 years ago, he added. In the rain. Asking to speak with someone about an empty lot. I was, Mira said. They told me not to let you in. I remember. He exhaled slowly, then offered her a small salute. Glad you're back. Mira didn't reply. She just smiled, soft, knowing, and moved on. The villas no longer glowed with gold and glass. Now they held softer light. Real light. The kind that spills from kitchen windows while dinner's cooking. The kind that warms more than walls. The cruel ones were gone. Their names erased from contracts, their fiefdoms dismantled. And in their place? Real people. People who didn't speak with cruelty or take photos to mock. People who, like Mira, had learned how to stand with dignity, whether they had a title or not. The news broke quietly at first. No press release. No photo op. Just a simple sign installed on a grassy hill that had once been home to Aramore Hill's private tennis pavilion. Future site of the Elston School for Resilience and Learning, for children without shelter, but never without potential. It was made of recycled wood, the paint hand-brushed. Someone tried to mock it on a local forum. She's building a daycare for the homeless? Cute. The post was deleted within hours, downvoted into oblivion. Construction began 2 weeks later. The pavilion was flattened. In its place, steel frames rose, then glass, then walls painted with warmth, moss green and chalk blue. Locals watched with cautious curiosity, then awe. The curriculum was Mira's design: free, holistic education for children experiencing homelessness or housing instability. No uniforms. No registration fees. Just warm meals, Rio books, and teachers who believed the worst day of a child's life shouldn't define their future. Word spread. Volunteers came. Retired educators, social workers, artists. People who had once lived in cars or shelters themselves. The community, her new community, brought what they had: second-hand instruments, paints, old computers, stories. Some who had once mocked her watched from outside the gates. Marina Liu, removed from her villa on day one, now sat daily in her Lexus parked at the perimeter. She never left her car. Just watched. One afternoon, a boy with tangled curls ran across the lawn, a hand-painted rocket in his grip. He shouted to his friend, "This place is cooler than Hogwarts." Mira laughed quietly, standing beneath the branches of a jacaranda. She didn't look like a CEO. She wore jeans and sneakers now, a sweater smudged with chalk from art class. But when she walked the halls of the school, the air stilled. The children called her Miss Mira, and ran to greet her. The woman they'd once tried to humiliate had built more than justice. She had built legacy. And this laughter echoing down the hill, this patch of sunlight spilling through windows once meant only for the wealthy. This was the world she had always meant to create. It started with a letter. Handwritten. No return address. No signature. Just a note slipped through the gate of the Elston School, folded crisply in an envelope that smelled faintly of rose perfume. I didn't know who you were. I only knew who I thought you weren't. And I was wrong. I'm sorry. Mira read it in her office, a sunlit room filled with children's drawings and a small potted lemon tree. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply placed the letter in a wooden box labeled reminders. More followed. Not from everyone, but from a few. Talia Moore, once the queen of cutting remarks, came back in plain jeans and a trembling voice. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She asked if she could help clean the school garden. Mira handed her gloves without a word. Bryce Callum returned 6 weeks later, holding his son's hand. He didn't mention the day he laughed in Mira's face. He just stood beside her and asked how to register for evening volunteer shifts. Mira nodded, and nothing more. People talked. They called it strange, what Aramore Hills had become. A place where the powerful were humbled, and the forgotten were housed. But to those who lived there now, it was simple, It was fair. Mira never posted about her victories. She didn't give interviews. Her presence was quiet but constant, walking children to class, helping single mothers navigate paperwork, sitting beside a teenager learning how to read. She never said, "I told you so." She never asked for apologies. But when they came, when a former socialite whispered, "I was awful to you," while watching her daughter eat a free lunch inside a school that shouldn't exist, Mira would pause. And sometimes, only sometimes, she'd say, "I know. But you're here now. And that matters." It wasn't about revenge. That had never been her language. Her language was action. Shelter. Books. Dignity. And now, in the place where she'd once been handed $20 to leave, she gave keys to others, so they could stay. It was spring again when the final home was repainted. Not with marble, or gold leaf accents, but with soft whitewash, wide windows, and flowering vines that reached like grateful hands toward the sky. The gates of Aramore Hills no longer closed at night. There were no more security codes, no retina scanners. Only a community watch group, a well-lit main road, and neighbors who actually knew each other's names. Mira stood in the middle of it all on a Saturday morning, holding a mug of tea. No cameras. No press. Just her. A little boy zipped by on a second-hand bike, repaired by the retired engineer who now lived in the East Villa. A young mother laughed on the porch of a home that had once belonged to someone who used her as a punchline. Two former foster teens were unpacking boxes into their first Rio bedroom. And Mira? She exhaled. Her mission was never vengeance. It was correction. This wasn't just about giving homes to the displaced. It was about displacing the idea that wealth should mean superiority. That silence is weakness. That looking poor means you are. She walked past the old fountain, now turned into a communal garden. The woman planting tulips there looked up, one of the few who hadn't mocked Mira all those months ago. She had simply said, "Let her look," and turned back to her wine. "Need help?" Mira asked, crouching beside her. The woman smiled. "I'm fine. But it's good to see you smile." "I am smiling," Mira said, and she was. At the school, children poured into classrooms. Mira watched them run, unafraid. They were never laughed at for what they wore. Never pitted. Never underestimated. She had turned the most exclusive neighborhood into a sanctuary. Not because she was rich, but because she remembered what it was like to be locked out. She would never forget. Later, in her small office, no longer a corner suite, just a sunlit space, she opened a drawer and pulled out an old $20 bill. Folded. Untouched. She placed it in a glass frame. And beneath it, a note in her handwriting. "For the day they tried to buy my silence. For the moment I chose to build instead." Outside, the wind picked up, warm and clean. The gates swung open, slow, sure, and permanent. And Mira Elston, who came in as no one, walked forward as everything they never saw coming. The founder. The builder. The reminder. The future.